I have Duke, AKA Psycho Pants. He's a little nuts. He's doing good right now, though.
You can't minimize that
No,
big
no, no.
screen.
He has a meet and greet.
All righty, how's everyone doing today? Good. Well, thank y'all for being here. We can go ahead and get started. So I guess since we don't have a chair, do we? Yeah, go for it.
Nominate Christina as a chair.
Chair.
Perfect.
Did you call it to order already?
No.
I'm not offering, I was just offering to call it to order if that's what you need.
Yeah, go for it. So we can call the meeting to order.
12:01, we're calling the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee, meeting to order.
And
Motion, do we have a second?
second.
And our next item on the agenda are any citizen comments that have been submitted.
We have no citizen comments, but if anyone would like to say anything, go for it. No? Hearing none?
Then we just start into the regular agenda items with the new advisory committee members and selection of a chair and vice chair. So for those, we would need nomination and second and all in favor type of situation. So
And I will,
the new members. on
yeah,
that.
and I will let, you all know who you are. I'll let you all introduce yourself. Very quick, brief introductions, just who you are, your background. We can start with Dr. Finney.
Dr. Penny, I'm a small animal veterinarian, about 2.5 years now, so.
Sorry, did you say 2.5 or 10?
2.5 years.
2.5. Okay.
We can go down the row.
Do you want everybody to introduce themselves?
Yeah, we can do that.
I'll do that. I'm Christina and I am in the animal welfare position for the advisory committee. I am a fellow lake shelter manager and I have been working in Grapevine for about 12 years. Before that, I worked through college in a humane society type environment. So I come with a variety of experiences. Now I'm working municipal, similar to the park.
Donna Manchester. I'm a citizen of Farmers Branch by about 1.5 years. Was in Carrollton for 25 years before that. I'm the VP of HR for a distribution company. I run a couple of dementia care support groups on the side. And my claim to fame here is just that I adore cats and have my own.
Perfect.
Lisa Kaloku, I grew up here, still in the same house. Been on the board for years. Have I'm in scouting, so I have a girl troop and a boy troop down the street, Johnson's Outpost. I work at UT Dallas, associate director for the development and human relations.
Jeannie Kirkland, born and raised here in Farmers Branch. I've never been on the board before, so this is all kind of new to me. It's her fault. It's all her fault. I've been with Doodle Rock Rescue for 7, almost 8 years, and have fostered over 50 dogs and help with transportation. And I do the Amazon ordering for all the fosters and really whatever they need me to do. So that's my experience. All I've done. I've loved animals all my life, but just never really got involved until it came along and the opportunity, and I love it.
I'm Christy Diamond, and I've lived in Farmers Branch for about 40 years from Georgia. And I also volunteer for Doodle Rock and 2 other rescue groups, Golden Retriever Rescue and Southwest English Service. So my house always has a foster dog first in my house, and I've been doing that for about 30 years. And my Pyrenees doodle is going to be starring as Sandy in Annie at the Firehouse Theater this Christmas.
Oh, that's adorable. Want to go for it?
I will introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Rainey, assistant to the city manager. Started with the organization this January and I'm super excited to be able to hire Tyler Winkler, animal services manager. I'm excited for where ASAP is going and where the shelter and the team are going. They've made a lot of changes. I'm really proud of their willingness to jump into things and to make changes and to make our shelter be the best that it's ever been before.
And I know I've met you all. I'm Tyler Winkler. I'm the Animal Services Manager for the City of West Branch. I joined the city after working for the Humane Society of the United States. I oversaw our law enforcement training program. We deliver training programs to around 10,000 enforcement officials across the country and across the world. So before that, I worked for El Paso County Animal Welfare. Very, very rural, large city, but it gets rural really, really quickly. So we have about 1,100 square miles of county to enforce and you know work with that population. Before that, I worked for the city of San Antonio Animal Care Services and started there as an animal control officer. It's a little bit about my background, but we can go ahead and who wants to volunteer to be our chair? Oh yeah, if you want to do introductions.
Why I manager, I work with the team. I appreciate all of you efforts that you've shown. I appreciate it all. Thank you.
Andrew, I connect for the you all and share this action types of questions. There are parking lot questions that don't necessarily cascade the agenda that can really be answered by the staff that we can help with afterwards. So we're help bridge some of those gaps.
Thank you all for being here.
Service manager at North Hospital.
Right, we all know each other. Who, I guess we'll need a motion to nominate a chair.
So this will be for the chair for the remainder or for the new fiscal year. So we'll need a chair and a vice chair for the new fiscal year, our next 4 meetings. You know, we've had somebody that has served in interim in the past, but we can open that up for discussion. If y'all would like to discuss first and then a motion. For both.
What are the duties of the two roles?
Great question. So chair leads the meeting. Chair would call the meeting to order. The chair, I believe, also by our ordinance, also have the capacity to call a special meeting to order. Vice chair would support and serve in that backup role if somebody weren't to be here. For our team, the chair and the chair and the vice chair would both need to be, I believe, one of our place 1 through 7 positions. So it couldn't be an alternate that I'm aware of.
You also attend, is it monthly, bi-monthly? What are the board
updates.
Yeah. I can't remember how often they've been because
Yeah,
I've been to them a few times, but I don't go.
I don't know how.
Just had one, I believe. We did have a mayor's update from boards and commissions, and that was over the summer. I'm just providing updates to them, but there could be opportunities for additional interaction.
I'd like to make a motion that Christina be our chair. She would accept.
I would accept it if somebody would like to second it. In favor?
Aye.
Who would like to nominate a vice chair?
Can everybody jump on?
You really, it would just be if I, I suppose, and guess. Hopefully I wouldn't have. Not shown. I would nominate Christine as vice chair. Give me a second. All in favor of Christine being the vice chair? Aye. Could you look in your packet, please, and consider the meeting minutes from June 19th? The same format, we would need um, an approval motion and then
I motion to approve.
all in favor of approving the June 19th meeting minutes. Okay, and then you're going to receive are we discussing our meeting schedule or you have a proposed meeting schedule?
So I have a proposed meeting schedule, but it's certainly open to discussion. We can change it as needed.
Is it in the packet? Or do we-
It is. Yeah, so it's in the packet here, on page 8.
Wednesdays.
Yes, they're all Wednesdays.
I just can't have a position.
Right, can she, do we have a quorum? Does she need to vote as well?
As an alternate, I'm not sure what I can and can't
Yeah.
do.
So we just need one alternate because we have one available position.
So she can vote?
We would just need one of you to not vote. Choose which one would love to be our alternate for today.
The voting alternate.
The voting alternate and the other non-voting alternate.
I'm fine not voting and just listening because I'm
Other new
just getting my bearings, so.
Me too. All right, so has everyone found our meeting schedule in the packet? So I know the January 8th meeting is a few weeks back from our 3-month, normal set schedule that we've had, but I didn't want to plan it right before the Christmas holiday. So we pushed it back a little bit into January, if that works for everybody. Everything from that is 3 months to the day from today. And we can amend these if needed.
Any concerns?
The only one I'm just checking is would it be okay if we did a different week in March? That's the school district. Spring break.
The calendar. What week would you propose?
It could be before or after. I don't know if other people have put that. I think that's the predominant.
Right.
Predominant weekend picked for the school.
Would
I don't know if college students or different district kids.
Right. With the week of Wednesday, March 26th for everyone to amend it to that day.
And so what day?
March 26th, and I'll send out an update to this meeting schedule as well. Do we have to vote on this, or is this, no? Okay.
It's just another dates written.
Yeah.
Are there any other dates anybody had a concern with, or are we good with the dates? That's all handled then.
All right, so as you all, I'm sure, looked through the agenda packet that I sent out, it's a little bit different format. There were some requests to go into our euthanasia numbers and take outcome numbers at our last meeting, so that's what I've done. I've updated that. There's certainly an opportunity for us to do a deeper dive, but I thought for the purposes of this, what we presented should give you all a high-level overview of our operations. Just making it working. All right, so here we have our intake numbers, and so this is June through August, June 1st through August 1st. So I've separated out 2023, 24 dogs and cats, just so we can do a comparison of this year versus last year. You'll see that by and large, we've had some of the numbers have been flat, but The number that I wanted to highlight is July. We had a 46% increase in canine intakes, which I will say our shelter felt it, our team felt it. We had a lot of dogs in our care. Later on in the slide, I'll show you how many animals we had in our shelter on average, but these are our intake numbers. These numbers down here are copied directly from our Pet Point system. So all I did was run a report. I took a screenshot and put it here. So these numbers are translated here into these graphs. But I just wanted to compare our intake numbers by month and then compare them to last year. So cats, again, relatively flat intake outcome. Dogs, flat as well, except for July, where we had a fairly large increase in those dogs. And I will say a majority of those that came in were large adult dogs. We had a few litters of puppies come through, but by and large, it was large adult dogs, which can be difficult to house just because we're not able to co-house them as easily. Sometimes there are opportunities to do that, but it's not like we took in a bunch of litters of small puppies where we can co-house them together. They were single large dogs for the most part. So seeing this information, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
Y'all have done a good job of socializing who's available.
Yeah.
Facebook, about other platforms. Noticed it. Good job.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that feedback. We've put a lot of effort into kind of revamping our social media. We've been active on Facebook and Instagram as well. And we also, as of 2 weeks ago, we have a Shelter Nextdoor account, which I'm working on getting set up so we can also post into those Nextdoor groups because a lot of our community members are looking for their pets there. It's just taken a little bit of time on my end because we have to apply with Nextdoor and it's a whole song and dance, but we do have approval from them. And we'll start using Nextdoor as well for that outreach. Any questions, further questions? No. So here are our intake numbers broken down into a percentage. So I wanted you all to see where our animals are coming from. By and large, our animals are coming to us as stray pets found in our community. Second is owner surrenders. And for me, I'm really trying to focus a lot on this owner surrender piece because I think that there's an opportunity for us to do more intervention with folks before they get to the point of having to surrender an animal into our care. I will say, when I took over shelter operations, we sat the staff down, and I know that there was some conversation at a previous ASAC meeting about having folks surrender their pet to the shelter for immediate euthanasia, and that was the verbiage that was being used. We changed that. That's no longer being used in our shelter, or to my knowledge, it's not. Staff has been given direction, and I've not heard that be done. We've been able to meet with folks, counsel them, and just provide them some basic resources to help keep their pets in their home if possible. Right now, pet inclusive housing is really, really difficult to find, which I think is why a larger portion of our large dogs are staying in the shelter for a longer period of time. They're not getting adopted as quickly as those small little dogs because apartments and landlords will welcome those and they won't welcome, the 6 80-pound German Shepherds that we have right now. So I'm really trying to do some more animal level data and take a look at what we can do operationally to decrease this owner surrender piece of our intake, hoping that we see some success with that. The other thing that we've been doing too to kind of mitigate so many owner surrenders, we were operating on the appointment-based system when I came in. We still do that, but we have folks come in and instead of it being like very transactional, you call, set up an appointment, wait 2 weeks, bring your animal in. That was the old process. Now folks can come into our shelter. We encourage them to come in, have a sit-down meeting with one of our staff members and try and figure out exactly what's going on. I'm a big proponent of the 5 whys. Usually you have to ask someone why 5 times to get to the root of the problem. And so our staff has been pretty good at doing that. And the other thing, it gives us the opportunity to vaccinate those animals prior to their intake. So it's also helping mitigate some of those disease risks. So that's been helpful. And then on the stray piece of the puzzle, we're, doing our best to be in the community. We're overlaying our data with our GIS mapping for the city, and we're looking at the parts of our community where we're getting the most animals from. And we're trying to be more proactive on going and knocking on doors in the community. If you saw on Facebook, we shared Operation Kindness, our partnership for the event that's coming up at the end of this week. We're doing door-to-door outreach, and all we did was look at our data for where animals are coming from, and we sent our officers, we sent Operation Kindness, and we're knocking on doors in this community. And so I'm really hoping that that's a program that we can continue doing in the future. And I'm hoping that folks will see us as a resource, and they know they can come to us for their microchipping needs. A lot of animals come to our shelter not microchipped, and there's no reason for it. Our officers now have the ability to microchip animals in the field, and they're doing so. There's still some hesitancy that we're working through, but we're microchipping animals in the field, which has been super helpful for us. The other smaller percentages, animals that have been adopted and returned to our care, animals that have been seized by our animal control officers, and then the service in are animals that are undergoing like bite quarantine, that type of stuff under state law. So these are how our animals are coming into us. Oh, and then for cats, that service in is TNR. So those are TNR animals that are coming into us. We're holding them for a short amount of time, and then we're releasing them back after they've been sterilized.
So a seized animal, does that mean they've been abused by their owner and they've been taken away?
Potentially, or
Treat them differently once you bring them in?
so it depends. So I know where these animals came from. Our shelter is small, so I know pretty much every single animal that comes through the door. The animals in this case were several German Shepherds that came in that needed some pretty significant medical care, which we've been able to provide. But yes, those animals we didn't get a warrant to seize them. They were actually surrendered into our care. We were, preparing to get a warrant to do all of those things, but the owners surrendered them into our care before we got to that point. So we still counted them as seized into care.
So are they psychologically damaged and harder to adopt out?
So these animals need some significant medical care. Pretty intense medical care, actually. It was confirmed, well, not confirmed, but one of them had what we suspect is brucellosis. So that animal, unfortunately, had to be euthanized. He also needed a total ear canal ablation ×2. So both of his ear canals will need to be surgically removed. And that's something that's beyond our capacity to handle. And also the brucellosis factor and the public health. We decided that euthanasia was the best outcome for him. But we do have 3 other animals from that litter still currently in our shelter. There were 2 additional ones that we've been able to send out to rescue groups. But yes, to answer your question, they do require more medical care. They require a lot more behavioral care from our staff. And then pair that with like the public health risk of brucellosis. But it's still an open investigation, and I will update you all when I am able to do so. Any questions about this?
Transfer in.
So transfer in so we work with our local shelters. So think Dallas Animal Services, the city of Carrollton. Most shelters in our area will transfer animals back into their care, specifically from Dallas Animal Services, because their shelter is very, very, very full all the time. They're at capacity. So if an animal came from us initially and was adopted from our shelter, we will transfer that animal back into our shelter, just because it has a higher chance of getting adopted. So that's what we do. But that's what those numbers represent.
When the owner surrenders, have you noticed any behavioral problems, or have y'all done any kind of assessment with those dogs, mainly if they're aggressive or?
So we certainly do. Every animal that comes in, we're going to evaluate for medical, behavior, owner surrenders included. One piece of this as well is we get quite a few folks who attempt to surrender their animals to us for euthanasia, for aggression or minor medical issues. We have changed some of our internal policies, and we no longer accept them as owner surrenders. We will accept them, but we will provide care for them as best as we can and put them up for adoption. So yes, we do. We certainly do that. Any questions?
For those that might be new, could you speak to TNR just for a quick summary?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have a TNR program that I'm working really, really diligently on kind of ramping up in our city. We have a lot of So TNR stands for trap, neuter, return. So we will loan traps out to residents. They will trap them and they can either bring them into the shelter or we will send an officer out to pick them up. We sterilize those animals, vaccinate them, and then we return them out to the community. Because the alternative would be, unfortunately, to euthanize those animals because they would not be adoptable because they're not handleable generally. And then on the converse side of that, if we do trap a feral outdoor cat that ends up being extremely friendly, we'll isolate that animal and then we'll move it into our general adoption population. So we're not going to release friendly cats back out that can be adopted. So. Any other questions? So these are our outcome numbers, and I broke them down by month and I broke them down by outcome reason. You'll see a majority of our animals their outcome is through adoption or return to owner. Well, for dogs, for cats, it's majority being adopted or transferred to our rescue partners. And again, I did the same thing here that I did with the other slides. I ran the report in our system. I grabbed a screenshot of that data and I pasted it here. The only thing here that I excluded, this report, I didn't want to cut and paste. I wanted you to see exactly what I see. But I excluded clinic services and animals that were picked up as DOA. So dead on arrival. So we occasionally will get folks who their animals pass away at home and they need somewhere to take that animal. We will house that animal for disposal, but we put them into our system. That way we know we can account for the animals that are in our custody.
Reasons for the
So we can go, the next slide has a little further breakdown. It could be anything for medical reasons, behavior reasons, from a bite. We had one dangerous dog investigation, or space or time. Well, not time, but space reasons. Any questions over this?
If you're out of space, are other efforts made before euthanasia? Like,
Certainly. So we reach out to our rescue partners. And so that's something that I've been working really hard on too, is rebuilding some of our relationships with our rescue partners. Because also, having worked at HSUS, I've seen the other side of rescue, this rescue holding situation. I do not want to put any of our animals into a worse situation where they came from. So I have a list of about 140 or so rescues. I'm slowly working through vetting those rescues. So making sure that we have an updated 501c3 status from them. And I'm also contacting animal control agencies or their local law enforcement, just to make sure that they're above board with them and they don't have like an active pending case. In El Paso County, we had a situation that arose from that, and we were sending animals out before I started there, but we were sending animals out to a rescue group. And it came to the point where we had to seize almost 200 of our animals back into our hands. And that's what I want to. Obviously, we're a smaller organization than that, but I'm still trying to do my due diligence and make sure that we are sending animals to people that can care for them and rescues included. So we do exhaust all options. These are our raw numbers. So these numbers I pulled straight from our database. I wanted you all to see like the higher level overview of things. If you would like, we can certainly go into the reasons for euthanasia at our next meeting, but this groups everything together. If they came in and they were hit by a car, or they severely injured a person, or it was a healthy, friendly dog and that was deteriorating in its kennel and was, posing a threat to itself, self-mutilating, all those animals are counted for here. All right. Any questions? And so this is our outcomes. I will say this odd 0.6% of service out was an odd bite case that happened. It happened in another jurisdiction and ended up being quarantined at our shelter. But that's what that service out, that weird 0.6% is. But everything else, you can see here how animals are leaving our shelter. And then again, I put percentages by everything. But again, when we're looking at these negative outcomes, so euthanasia, diet and care, That includes every single animal that comes into the shelter. Those are animals that are maybe they're neonate kittens and they come in hypothermic or they have flea anemia, stuff that while we can try and treat it, it's not always effective. Everything is included in these numbers. Any questions? And so here is our calculated live release rate for the past 3 months. So all I did here, I did that same screen grab, and then I just highlighted in green positive outcomes. So adoptions, return to owner, transfers to rescue groups. The red are what we would consider a negative outcome. So they died in care or euthanasia. And then these gray are those clinic and DOA. So I didn't count that in our live release rate numbers because we do operate a clinic out of our shelter. And so those animals are coming into our shelter, we're providing care for them and they're leaving. So they're not actually being housed in our shelter long term. So I don't want to include those numbers here because it would inflate that live release rate. And same thing with DOAs. Those animals are coming into us from the community already deceased. So I took those numbers out. It's a fairly simple calculation. The only numbers that I did not include are owner surrender for euthanasia. So I went into our subtype. We no longer, if a person surrenders an animal into our care and they wish to have their owner euthanized, that animal has to meet lots of criteria. It has to be behavioral, medically emergent issue for us to agree to euthanize an animal. If it doesn't meet that criteria, we put the animal up for adoption, provide medical care. But anyway, those owner surrender euthanasias are animals that have come into us that are medically urgent. We have had several cases of folks bring their elderly senior pets in who can no longer walk, dying of cancer, those types of things. And we do provide that service to our community at low cost. So I did take those numbers out because that's a service that we're providing for animals that would suffer otherwise. So, you can see the data here. I counted everything up. And I just divided our live or our adjusted total outcome. Sorry, my math is not good. I divided live outcomes by adjusted total outcomes there and came up with that percentage at the end. So the percentage that you're seeing there is kind of our raw data. I didn't go in and I didn't take out behavior animals. I didn't take out animals that came in that were medically irreparable. I didn't do that. This is our raw shelter data. So if you have any questions or you'd like me to break it down further for future meetings, but I wanted to present our total overall live release rate for our shelter. And this is what it is. Any questions? No? Okay, and so here's our daily average population in shelter and in foster care. I included our foster care numbers because it's important to note that we still provide care for those animals. I know our friends at North Dallas Vet are constantly inundated by questions about foster animal pets because we're trying to manage the care of all of our shelter animals and an additional 35 to 45, 50-ish animals that are in foster care. So imagine trying to manage your own pet's care, multiply that by 150, and that's kind of the workload that we've got. So I wanted to include that, but I broke it down. So the green is dogs in foster care, blue is dogs that are in the shelter, the purple number is cats in foster, and yellow is the cats in shelter. So this is the total daily population of animals that we're required to provide care for. And then moving forward, I want to just keep extending this graph out so we can actually analyze trends. My idea was to do this for the last year, but I changed so much of our data and reporting that it wasn't an apples to apples comparison. So I just started in June when I knew how we were reporting our data.
Speak to just the number of animals in foster care previously, just based off of your understanding?
Yeah, so when I started May 7th, I ran a report and we had 2 animals in foster care total. This morning when I looked, we had 42 animals total in foster care, which is good. I was really nervous about putting all these animals into foster care and having this balloon, but our foster numbers have leveled out. We're hovering around that 35 to 45 foster, we're able to complete fosters and then add new fosters. So we're hovering at around 35 to 40 animals, which is good. I will say we're working, so one that fosters has my personal cell phone number. And if they have a medical emergency or something goes wrong, I'm the one getting all those phone calls and texts in the middle of the night. My cat had diarrhea. Got it. Happens every night. So regardless, we're working on some solutions to implement some, triage there through an app-based system. There's some things that we're going to do to streamline that. So I'm not the one answering all of those questions 24 hours a day. But right now, I forgot the total number of animals that have gone through foster care, but it's well over 100, which has been really impactful for our shelter.
So what's the difference between adoption and fostering? You both foster, right?
Yes. Fostering is where you don't know what you're getting, but you take in a foster, a dog in our case, and we care for them, feed them, we teach them love, and we pretty much train them so that they're ready to go to an adoptive family.
Get to know them, try to figure out what they need, what kind of family they need to go to.
Okay.
Whether or not they can be around children, other animals, or, we determine what's best for the dog. And then we write a bio and they get put up for adoption, and we're pretty selective about, because we don't want the dog to return. The dogs are passed around too much. And so we want to pick out the perfect family for them and they get adopted.
How long do you foster? How long do you have it?
It depends on the dog.
Sometimes 4 months, sometimes 5 months, sometimes.
When I first started, we wanted to foster them and do what we needed to do in the least amount of time. So it was usually maybe 2 months max, but we've got so many dogs now. It's just a holding pattern. Well, yeah, your dog's ready to get adopted, but we have to get this one first, and then it'll be your turn. And the time just
Yeah.
keeps getting longer and longer. And
Mhm.
it just depends on how many dogs.
We have 219 fosters and how many dogs in foster care?
Yeah.
Could you
A
speak
lot
to
of litter for foster bill.
I was just about to say, could you speak to some that just adopt or just foster for just a weekend and some that turn into foster fails, which is still a win for the
Yeah,
shelter?
I
absolutely.
hate that term. Win.
Yeah.
Win.
So I ran some, don't quote me on this, but I quickly ran some of our data, and it looks like around 65% of animals that have gone to foster care have been adopted by their foster, which is a good thing. But that leaves us constantly trying to rebuild our foster base because those folks have adopted.
Then they don't want to foster anymore.
Exactly. So we're constantly trying to rebuild our foster base. But I think for us, it rings true too that, we have the animals in our shelter that we're trying to move and trying to advocate for. And we also have the animals in foster care that they're getting cared for outside of the shelter, but we still eventually have to come up with an outcome for them as well. So they're not stuck in lingo or in foster care for months and months and
If
months.
somebody wanted to be a foster,
Mhm.
what do they do?
So all they need to do is visit our shelter. They essentially go through the same process and application as an adoption. So we do all the same paperwork, we get all the same documentation. The only additional thing is we make sure that we have, or make sure that they understand medical needs, and if there's an emergency, to contact us. Don't just bring it to a private veterinarian, and it gets very complicated there. So there's a very short, educational window there for us to teach people what they need to do. But we're pretty fortunate in that we're able to provide our fosters almost everything they need to take care of an animal long term. So food, crates, leashes, pretty much everything you need to take care of an animal, we're able to provide it and give it to them for them to take care of those animals. And I will say in the next month, hopefully the next month or so, those supplies are fairly expensive. So we'll probably send out a wish list or something. That way we can hopefully regenerate our supplies. Just because we've had so many animals go out, which is a good thing, but we've got to make sure we have the supplies on hand to take.
What our rescues do is that when we have somebody foster, first 2 fosters that they have, they're not allowed to adopt them because we lose them.
Right.
Fosters.
Yeah.
And then after the 3rd one, they can be a foster.
That's a good idea.
Have fosters that adopt and then still continue to foster.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, it's not everyone quits fostering, but most people don't
A
want to
lot
take
of them.
they do. And the other thing too, and I'll say this is, when I started recognizing that foster care was going to be impactful, I don't want to say we just threw it together quickly, but it was pretty rapid. So it was pretty quick. We had to get animals out of the shelter.
Yeah.
And so now that it's leveled out a bit, I'm hoping that we'll be able to put in a little bit more of that and dive in a little bit deeper into our foster program. My immediate focus was just to get animals under responsible so I could care for them. And now I'm hoping we can go back and put in a little bit more of that framework for that type of stuff.
I honestly didn't know that y'all fostered animals. The shelter. So I wonder how many other people in our community don't even know.
Right.
I didn't know.
Yeah. And, I will say the reason that I haven't pushed it so much is because we have 40 to 45 animals in foster care and we have a staff of 8.5 or so and me. So trying to manage any more than that, I don't want to get to the point where we're sending animals out into foster care and we lose track of them and something happens. So I want to know where our animals are. I want to keep in constant contact and how it is right now, that is the workload that I'm able to take on myself. Obviously, our staff is able to help me somewhat, but they have their own daily duties that they've got to do. So right now, I think we're at about our, I don't want to say limit. I think there's always room for improvement.
Is there a reason why you can't have a volunteer to handle that stuff?
Yeah, so we certainly can. We are rebuilding our volunteer program as well. So we
So
have
that
learned,
takes the pressure off you and the
yes,
staff.
and that would be my goal is to get folks who are interested in doing this, who can go in and update biographies on our website, update that type of stuff. That I don't always have the time to do. So I think that there will be a volunteer opportunity in the future. Right now where we're at in our volunteer program, it was something, I think when Jennifer hired me, that was like goal number one is to get volunteers in our shelter.
Yeah.
I didn't want to bring in this whole host of outside folks before I knew what was going on until I got comfortable with it. And I think we're at a point now where we can start doing that. We have some updated HR guidelines, which have been speed bump a little bit, but we're working through that. All of our volunteers will have to go through background checks to volunteer at our shelter now, which we were not doing before. So again, as an added speed bump, and we're working. But I hope to see a really robust volunteer program in the next few months. That's my goal.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It would be really helpful, I promise. All right, any other questions? And then I just put together some of our field and community services. For our next presentation, I want to dive a little bit deeper into these numbers. I'll admit I didn't have as much time as I had hoped to really do a deep dive and give you more impactful information, but these are our basic numbers. They kind of mirror what was presented before. So FBTX Connect, this is the number of calls that came in through the city's app-based service. Our shelter fielded almost 5,000 phone calls in the last 3 months. We had 106 cases created that resulted in an investigation from our animal control officers. That could be anything from neglect, roaming dogs, permit issue, pretty much anything that resulted in a case and some sort of action taken. Deceased animal pickup, 99. So that I'm hoping that there's some opportunity for me to break this down. Right now, it's not possible, but I would like to know what animals we are picking up. If it's wildlife, I imagine it's a lot of wildlife. But I really would be interested in knowing the companion animals that we're picking up deceased, because I think that would be a good litmus test for us to know how many roaming animals there are in our city. And then this is the number of microchips implanted, and then spay neuter completion. So as you all may or may not know, Farmers Branch has a sterilization order for animals that are impounded by our shelter. Is that news to anybody? No, everyone knew that. So in our ordinance, it gives folks 30 days to comply with sterilization. That can be difficult for a lot of folks financially to afford that. And so our shelter has been able to partner with Operation Kindness to provide those surgeries for folks either at low cost or no cost. So that's been pretty helpful as well. We're able to get those animals who are constantly roaming in our city, and at least we're able to get them sterilized so they're not reproducing, and at low cost of the owner, because in a lot of those cases, they're unable to provide that care. And then again, those microchips implanted. Any questions here? No?
Just out of curiosity, in trying to help your shelter, are y'all familiar with Chew Animal Clinic?
We talked about it.
Okay.
We are, yeah.
Because they serve under
right.
privileged people that can't afford veterinary care.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe that's something that you could get help there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm all for a creative solution to things. We're very fortunate in that we have the partnership with Operation Kindness. And so there's no financial burden to us outside of like the time it takes staff to care for the animals and the equipment to do it. But it's fairly inexpensive. So right now there's not a financial burden on the shelter or the city to provide those services to folks. But in the future, as that Operation Kindness grant sunsets, we're going to have to figure something out because it's a service I would love to keep providing for our residents. Hopefully we'll start helping reduce those numbers. I know we've been able to fix a lot of our problem dogs that we have a lot of houses in the city that their animals are loose all the time. And at least we've been able to get those animals sterilized and not reproducing anymore. All right, and that's it from me. I'll turn it over to Jennifer. It's up at the top.
Okay, all right, perfect. All right, Jennifer Rainey, Assistant to the City Manager. I am excited to present a little bit of an update. I know we discussed this in our last ASAC meeting, but excited to present a little bit of an update for the shelter expansion. At our last meeting, we were discussing where we were at. We were digging through those old plans, trying to see what had been discussed, what had been mentioned in the past, that we received a large donation. And I'm excited to provide an update on that. So this is generally our current shelter layout. If you've been over and been on a tour with Tyler, you probably know that he's kind of got some moving parts at all times just to best fit the needs of our animals. So sometimes these dog kennels that these cat kennels that are in this back area, those have now been moved up to the front. Sometimes they're in his office. He's just constantly trying to move and flex to make sure we have the right amount of space for our animals. I love going over there every week because I'm able to see what he's changed and what he's shifted for the needs of the animals that we have. Sometimes we've got a bunny up front, or a gerbil, or a chicken in the back, or whatever might be the case. So those flex rooms have been really important to us. For those of you who weren't here at our last meeting, those flex rooms are a primary area for us to ebb and flow different types of animals. If we've got a play group that can hang out together, there's been a litter of puppies and their mama dog there. So you've been able to flex the number of animals. So it's not just one animal, but sometimes it's 5. Similar on those cat rooms. So those cat rooms up at the front as you walk into the shelter, this is that entrance down on the bottom right. As you walk into the shelter, those are those free roam rooms. So there can be 1 animal in there. I think in January when I first started, there was 2 cats and that was it. It's been kitten season for a while, so there's been a lot of cats going around. Kind of calmed down, and some of our community partners have been able to take some cats because they were able to get rid of a lot of cats and adopt a lot of cats. So our total capacity that we're comfortable with saying is that 70 animals. We did receive a generous donation, and through that generous donation are able to pursue potential expansion. That donation was tied to some type of cat wing or cat area. So we're really excited to explore options that will allow cats to be in a different area. I know as we did a tour 2 ASAC meetings ago, back in March, as we did a tour, there were concerns about the animals facing each other. So we had the dogs and the cats on that first hallway as you enter our adoption hallway. We've got the dogs and the cats that are facing each other. So we're hopeful and excited to pursue opportunities to bring those cats into a different area. So that lowers the stress of them. That lowers that exposure. They're not constantly hearing the dogs barking. And they're also not staring. We've got some moody cats sometimes that just stare and hiss at the dogs across the way. So we're excited to look into some opportunities there. Come from a public health background, and I know Tyler and I have discussed this. I'm sure y'all have discussed that from the veterinarian side, is just the health portions. We want to make sure that we're keeping our small groups together, that we don't have one big, large cat room, because if something happens in a very a cat comes in with something that's very contagious, that could wipe out the entire room. So we want to make sure that we can continue to keep those small rooms so that if something does happen, hopefully it's not spreading room to room.
So when you bring cats in, you don't segregate them at first before you put them into the general population to see if there's anything wrong with them?
So generally not. It depends on how old it is. If it's a small kitten under 6 months or so, yes, we will do that. If it's an adult cat, generally not. They go into a general housing room with animals that have been vaccinated previously. Again, it's on here right now, our current configuration is pretty much identical. But we have one of those rooms we turned into like a kitten ward essentially. And so they are able to go in there and we segregate them, and we're usually able to get those small kittens adopted within a few days really quickly. So they're in and out of our shelter. Those adult cats stick around for a little bit longer, but no, we do not isolate before they go into the general population. Usually if there's symptoms or an illness or something that we notice, yes, we do that.
It's a little differently though for TNR cats, those
Yes.
feral cats. So
Right.
they do go to a specific area, a specific hold. And then just to speak to that just a little bit, I know that Tyler mentioned that 2-week appointment. So when they're coming in, when somebody is bringing an animal in, if they choose to surrender their animal, speak to how you are going ahead and vaccinating them.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything that comes into our shelter that is age appropriate will receive vaccines. Prior to starting, there were some time they weren't vaccinating animals after a certain time in the day. Done away with that. Every animal that comes into our shelter gets vaccinated at intake immediately, assuming that there's no medical conditions or it's not age appropriate, obviously. And then for those owner surrenders, if they don't have medical records, majority of folks don't, we have them come in and we're able to vaccinate them before, so they can hopefully build up some immunity before they come into the shelter. But for our TNR cats, we have a completely separate
I've actually used
room.
that program.
Oh, yeah. So we have a separate room for them. So they are all housed completely separately from the rest of the population.
Okay.
So this is just another way to break that down. As we've discussed, and if you walk through the shelter, you're pretty familiar with this kind of stray hold versus the isolation of the sick area. If they come in and they are very clearly sick with something, they're going to go into an isolation area. We've got those 2 social cat rooms, a rabies quarantine, some TNR areas. I will say that number has changed just as he is moving and wheeling around different kennels and making sure that we've got the right number of spaces for the right number of animals. So I was going to use this slide and just cross out all of the things that we have done already, but the list was too long to fit on the page. So I just erased everything that we had done already since our last meeting and where we're at now. So we're currently in that needs assessment and conceptual design. I believe at our last meeting, that was a hope. We were able to work with the previous designer of our facility, gave us a significant discount because they have all the plans. They knew how it was built because it was their architectural design. So they're working through that needs assessment and conceptual design, and we hope to receive that shortly. As soon as we do receive that, they're also going to provide us a cost assessment or a cost analysis and kind of help us to prioritize what we need and then look at the money and see what we can actually get with the money that we have. So I do anticipate that there will be some items that are higher on the list and some items that we're not going to be able to fund with what we have. But I'm excited to see that just to get a better idea. We want to make sure that we're providing areas that are appropriate for the animals, and they worked with Tyler to get the appropriate sizing for those animals to make sure that they're not being cramped into an area that's too small, as well as making sure that from that kind of public health component or that disease and illness and infection rate component, that each room has a a sink, or each room has a storage closet of cleaning supplies, so that hopefully those team members that are going in there, the volunteers that are going in there are cleaning, putting it away, cleaning their hands as they're leaving, so we're not having something transfer from room to room to room to room. That's a best practice that we've seen in other shelters. It's a recommended best practice. I'm sure our veterinary partners would recommend that as well. So we hope to go into design, approval, and construction next. And then as we're doing all of these things, these are two kind of caveats that are different, but still very, very interconnected. So continuing to build those volunteer and foster opportunities. We will have some shelter impacts if they're knocking out a wall or they're taking a current room and changing that capacity. We want to make sure we've got those volunteers or those fosters that are available to take on animals, even if it is just for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, while they're doing that construction. And then similar, expanding our community engagement and community support services. So that's our partnerships with different foster agencies. Our partnerships, even with some of our local shelters, have been really, really impactful. Some of our local shelters had a little bit of money at the end of the fiscal year, and so they were able to pay other organizations to take animals from them. And so they raised their hand and said, "Hey, do you have any more? You can send us more." And so those have been really, really beneficial for our organization to be able to lower that number. We're hopeful that we can rely on those in the future too. So operationally, things are still going to be running smoothly. We might have to close or tape off a room or seal off an area. But even as we've discussed with the design, with the architectural design firm, this is a primary concern for us from the needs assessment side and from the construction side, is making sure we can still stay in operation. Tyler has significant experience running shelters and pop-up shelters and things like that, emergency shelters. But my hope is that we can continue to operate as normal, just slightly modified to keep going forward.
I don't want to run a shelter out of our parking lot.
Yeah.
We can, but I don't.
He has experience there, but I feel like we've given him many charges already, and I don't want to give him another one there too. And I think that is the last slide here.
I think so. I had the same problem.
All right. Any questions?
Looks good. And then the last piece of a quick update on just some of our staff goings on. I know a lot of you, I'm sure, follow us on social media. We've been a lot more active this past. All right, so here are some of our upcoming events. This Saturday, in partnership with Operation Kindness, we have a free vaccine event for Farmers Branch residents, so folks can bring out their pets. It's free for the first 200 pets that come through, which is really, really exciting for us. So Operation Kindness, is going to provide those vaccines. The city is paying for it, but they're going to be there, doing all of the vaccines for us. We're going to be there doing a little bit of outreach, passing out some food, those types of things. But we're really, really excited. I hope the turnout is good. I've tried my best to promote it. We've gone door to door. We've pulled all the levers that I can think to pull to get folks to come out. So I hope the turnout is good. Clear the shelters. So August to September was Clear the Shelters month. We had 64 animals total get adopted and 46 went into foster care, into foster to adopt. So for those animals that I want to foster during that time, we're going to honor that free adoption. And so if they choose to adopt after, that adoption will be waived as well. So Clear the Shelters was super helpful. It got a lot of animals moved out of our shelter into permanent homes. This weekend on Sunday, we had a Run Club event with Run It Up Dallas. We met at, oh gosh, that's the name of the park. Sam Houston Trailway Park in Irving, just right down the street. We brought out our adoption trailer. We had 11 adoptable dogs there, and folks were able to come and they actually took our animals running, which was super helpful. We have a lot of large, younger, very high energy, very, very, very high energy dogs right now. And so they're able to go run several miles, which was super helpful. It was a lot of fun. I was a little nervous about it, but it turned out really, really well. It was super great. Partners there were Irving Animal Services and DFW Humane Society. So all of us were able to bring out animals and they all got to go run several miles. And it was just good to interact with the community in a different way than them coming and walking into our doors in our shelter. It was really fun. It was fun for me. It was fun for the staff. And I think the dogs had a good time. We have an event on September 28th at Fire Station number 3. It's going to be a semi-adoption event, semi-wildlife education event. As you know, we discussed in our last meeting that the city has quit trapping wildlife that appears to be healthy. So we've been getting some calls from upset residents about that, not as many as I had anticipated, but I want to make sure that we do our due diligence, provide some education and best practices for like hazing those animals. So folks have some alternative and we're not just telling them, it's your problem, go deal with it. We want to make sure that we're providing resources to those folks. And then we're partnering with St. Andrew's Church on October 5th for a free microchip event with TCAP. So we'll be there. And then also this weekend, I'll be speaking at St. Andrew's Church again on wildlife and just the function of animal services. And then October 19th, this didn't make it on here because I just confirmed it late last week. We're going to be partnering with, is it Brookhaven Senior Center? And we're going to be doing like a smaller scale adoption event and allowing their residents to interact with some of our smaller, younger puppies and kittens. But I think it will be a really good event and hopefully just let those folks who are maybe they're in assisted living and they had to give up their pet or they're not able to have pets anymore, allow them to interact with our animals. And hopefully it'll be fun for our staff and get those animals some love
When
too.
is this event?
October 19th. So it didn't make it on here because I just met with the director of the assisted living facility in Brookdale, yes. But it will be October 19th. And so they have a courtyard in the middle of their campus and we're going to set up some kennels. We have a small portable like catio thing. So we'll allow their residents to interact with their cats and it'll be a feel good event. And I'm excited for that as well. So I think that's all the goings on of our shelter. Trying to be a lot more active in our community. That's my goal. That's my background. That's what I think will help us move the needle in the direction of life saving. And if there's ever opportunities that you all can think of for us to partner with someone in the community, I'm happy to look into it.
The Rut Club
Mhm.
Animal Interaction, is that on the last meetings?
It was not. So that popped up kind of out of the blue. I had about 2 weeks of lead time. We didn't advertise for it because we didn't have a ton of information. But moving forward, I'm hoping that that's something we can continue to do with them. And I'm trying to twist their arm to host them at our shelter. It would be, we're very fortunate in that our shelter is built literally at a park. With the huge college campus behind us has a really, really nice running trail. So I'm trying to convince them to start those at our shelter once or twice a month or something on Sunday. So hopefully we can get more animals out of the shelter in the mornings and get them exercise and give our staff time while those animals aren't there to deep clean everything really quickly. But that's my goal with that. I was really excited for the turnout there. We didn't have any adoptions, but our animals got out into the community and they got to have fun and the community had fun interacting with them.
Because Lily and I would have been there.
Yeah, and if we're going to do this again, and I will definitely send it out to you all. This popped up within the last 2 weeks. We threw everything together. I ordered a bunch of martingale collars and vests and stuff on Amazon, and we made it work. But the turnout was good. Everybody had a really good time. So we're going to move forward with more events, and hopefully they can come to our shelter and we can just run that at our shelter. That's my goal.
I don't know what you're doing in the wildlife education event, but I wanted to mention that Carrollton once brought in the woman who runs the Bobcat Rescue place. And she brought a Bobcat with her and she talked for like 2 hours and allayed the fears of all these people who have an unfounded fear of bobcats.
Right.
And talked about how they socialize, and where they have their dens, and that they don't attack pets, they don't attack children. It was a very, very valuable lesson for all these people who are like, oh, there's a bobcat in my yard.
Right. Yeah, that's a really, really good opportunity. We get a lot of calls about bobcats. Oddly enough, we were at a city council meeting last week or the week before, and I get a phone call, and I don't normally get phone calls in the middle of city council meetings, and it was our police department dispatch, and they said there's a lion, or no, a tiger. There is a tiger. And I'm like, Okay. So I go outside and fortunately our police chief was there and they confirmed it was a bobcat. It was not a tiger. But I was getting really, I was like, oh gosh.
What now?
I worked in San Antonio. We picked up tigers, so I would not be surprised, but I'm like, I did not need a tiger in our city, but it was pretty funny. But that's a really, really good idea and something I hope to do. I'm also trying to send our staff. We have a lot of wildlife. We're sitting in a park. We have a lot of wildlife here. Our officers interact with wildlife, and I'm not a wildlife expert by any stretch of the definition. So I'm trying to get us into more wildlife education classes so our officers are more comfortable working with those animals and they know proper restraint and handling techniques. We're working with Rogers Wildlife. I'm hoping right now. So something I didn't put in here, but we're sending our staff to Operation Kindness. I'm sending them weekly to do rotations with them. So when I came in, I implemented a lot of new policies and procedures and standards and all these things. And the staff was like, this is a lot. And it was a lot. And I appreciate them from rolling with the flow. They've done such a good job. But I wanted them to see how other shelters operate. So we've been sending them to Operation Kindness so they can learn from them. And it's not just me dictating all these things. They can see the practices that we're implementing and how they're using them. So our staff is rotating through there. We actually have a staff member there right now working with them. And the other thing that I would like to do is send them to Rogers Wildlife so they can learn some of those restraint handling techniques for those animals. But that's my goal. Another fun update. Dogs Playing for Life is coming to the city of Dallas. So the city of Dallas received a grant to bring in Dogs Playing for Life, which teaches animal shelters how to conduct play groups in large scale. We already have a very small play group program, but I want our staff to be more comfortable in managing play groups because it can be a lot trying to manage 5 or 6 dogs who you don't always know everything about. So they received a grant and they're going to invite local shelter partners to attend. So we'll be sending 2 of our staff members to that, which will be really, really impactful for us, I think. And then also I wanted to highlight that all of our staff has completed fear-free training over the last 2 months or so. I gave everyone a month to do it because it takes a while to complete. But you know, I've taken these classes so many times, and some of our staff, this is their first time going through it and getting certified and all those things. But it's amazing to me to hear and see them implement some of these techniques, like especially vaccinating animals. We vaccinate everything at intake and all the time. Not all animals are agreeable all the time, so they're using some of these techniques. But I just wanted to highlight that they've completed that. Our random inspection from DSHS, we had no negative remarks. They didn't call anything out. We were able to pass that. And then continuing ed, so fear-free designation, 3 staff members, so myself and one of our officers and one of our kennel assistants are going to be attending the TACA conference, the Texas Animal Control Association conference in San Antonio in November. They're really, really excited for that. And then one of our animal control officers applied for a program through Maddie's Fund, which is a national nonprofit. They have a really big education and training program. She applied to a few instructor-led courses and was selected for 2 of those. So she's starting those right now and we'll complete them. And I'll update you all when she's done with them. But she was really happy to get selected for those because they are fairly selective. But that's it for me. That's all of our staff updates. I know that was quick, but any questions that you all may have?
I'm so glad they're getting their certifications.
Yeah, they were excited to learn and be given the opportunities to put more tools under their tool belt. So I'm glad they're able to do that. Anything else?
Nothing else, we need a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All okay, the meeting is adjourned at 1:10.
Got it? Perfect. We'll stop recording.
I have a question and comment.
Mhm.
The question was on the fitness again, how is this here vaccine?
We are. So if you're a Farmers Branch resident, we will